In 1992, the entire world was chanting the same hook. The stereo MCs had completely taken over the globe with their album Connected. They were pulling in Brit Awards, touring stadiums, and essentially defining the crossover sound of hip-hop and dance music. But what the mainstream media didn't understand was that this wasn't some manufactured major label pop group. They were a DIY, underground operation that accidentally struck gold. And the reality of getting to the top was a lot different than the reality of staying there.
We got there very organically. It grew over 3 albums, and you know, it was kind of exciting times. But I got to say, the getting there was more enjoyable than the being there.
To understand how they got there, you have to go back to the beginning. Rob Birch and Nick Hallam weren't born into the London music elite. They were just 2 kids who realized early on that if they wanted to actually make a dent in the industry, they had to leave their hometown behind and throw themselves into the deep end.
Originally we lived in Nottingham. We moved to London when we were like 18, 19 because we wanted to do music and there was more going on in London.
They eventually found their spiritual home in Brixton. It was the 1980s, and London was a melting pot of punk, reggae, and early hip-hop. They didn't have money for high-end acoustic treatments or fancy recording suites. What they needed was a place where they could operate on their own terms, build their own beats, and blow the speakers out without anyone calling the cops.
I think as we kind of gradually got a bit of money, we decided to buy a place, and that's basically we came to Brixton because it was close and because it was cheaper to buy a place, because we wanted to get like a house on a corner so we could make a lot of noise. When I lived in the house there, they used to have parties there all the time, and there was like French punk bands and things like that all playing in the street there.
That raw energy seeped directly into their music. Eventually, they set up their own headquarters right in the thick of it. The history of their Brixton studio alone reads like a gritty rock and roll survival story. They weren't building sterile vocal booths. They were recording in the literal trenches of London's underground counterculture.
We were lucky in a way because I used to live on the other corner. In fact, we had our studio in the basement there. And this building was empty for years because this road used to be the front line where all the riots in Brixton started. Down here was like, it had been like a place where they had illegal parties, and there was a DJ, a breeze block DJ booth, I think in the middle there, and it was all flooded. There was a little poster saying no drugs. Why Brixton is what it is because of that, you know, the whole cultural clash and all the different types of music.
And because they were completely outside the traditional system, they approached making records completely differently. When the stereo MCs started, the concept of sampling music was still the Wild West. There were no rule books, no massive legal teams clearing snare drums, and no algorithms. It was just pure, unfiltered experimentation.
I mean, we didn't even know you had to clear a sample.
It was a phenomenon. The whole thing was a phenomenon which hadn't actually touched planet Earth yet. It was a sound you'd never ever heard before, and that was the vibe. But when it became really commercialised, people were just going for the jugular and just going, well, this is a really catchy old tune and we can definitely rinse it and sell a lot of records if we couple this catchy old tune with a rap.
As technology evolved and computers took over the recording industry, a lot of 90s acts completely lost their signature sound. But stereo MCs always understood that the gear doesn't make the song. Whether they were manually looping tape on an analog desk or clicking a mouse, the workflow was just a means to an end. It was always about capturing the spark.
I think creative is creative, and all of the rest of the stuff is that's just what you're using now.
I mean, it is great, but then, you know, making records with like old gear is great as well. Like one day you could come in and go, oh, I need to turn that on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, oh, I need to play the guitar. Or it could be, oh, I need to do something on the computer.
But that organic, vibe-driven approach directly collided with the reality of massive commercial success. After Connected exploded, they saw the music industry mutate. Physical records vanished, streaming took over, and suddenly, the massive corporations that had always lurked in the shadows were taking total control of the art form.
We're lucky in that we have had some success, so it was at a time when we could actually sell some records. really the people that make the music are the ones that are coming out worse from it, because even if you sell shitloads of MP3s on iTunes, really the artist gets such a small amount of that. With everything, big corporations have just like moved in.
Rather than play the major label game and churn out soulless pop hits just to satisfy a corporate board, stereo MCs took a massive step back. For them, the idea of returning to a manufactured label system was the exact opposite of why they started making noise in a Brixton basement in the first place.
If we could make music and make a living doing it in a nice way, the thought of getting him back into that major record company program.
Today, their views on the modern music scene and modern British society in general are brutally honest. They lived through an era of extreme musical freedom, and they see the current landscape as heavily restricted, heavily monitored, and lacking true dangerous creativity.
There's so many boundaries now, and regulations and rules and cameras watching you, and there's so little you can do without actually watching your back. I don't mean there's nothing good going on, but as a society it feels far more straitjacketed the more time goes on, and far more like a George Orwell story than ever before.
I don't think there's that much radical creativity going on, really. I think people think they're being radical and creative, but they're just making a fucking sound bite.
But the stereo MCs haven't given up. They are still out there, running their own independent label, operating entirely on their own terms, and taking their music directly to the people. Exactly like they did when they first moved to London.
In a way, we've been getting there again for the last 10 years. Obviously there's a point where you still have to make money from it, but you know, we're out working all the time, you know, like I say, playing live, DJing and all that stuff. So, you know, we're out there because we want to be out there.